Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about another sparring footwork drill, our passing pivot. The move that all of this has been kind of leading up to. So one way that the old Federation used to use to defend against like center cuts as well as many other types of cuts. To a certain degree that some of them don't work with this, but that's okay, but they use it for all of them anyway, is going to be again that passing pivot, specifically with our 11 block. Now you can do it with the other side as well. This is the most popular one, at least when you're going to our left. So the idea here is someone is giving us a would-be death blow. I evade blocking with my sword with a typical 11 block. I'm going to pivot as I step back, cut. Now that's where Gumdo actually sort of ends. But from here, I want you to make sure you step back defense. Or really just depending on whatever guard you would want to have, something that you yourself, it's not me telling you what to do, but what you yourself feel comfortable holding. So for example, if we're here, 1, 2, right? A guard that I'm actually pretty happy with is actually just stepping back with WHDGDF Garo, right? But most people watching this video probably have like no idea what that is, and also it sounds funny. One reason why I like it. But that's the idea. Someone's coming in, I evade, I use that counter to cut. One thing to keep in mind as you go through this, especially with a partner, is there's a lot of different ways to make it work. For example, one thing you can do is actually the most dangerous, oddly enough, is to actually receive the cut, feel it come in, and then pivot cut, right? And then get out however you want to from there. The reason why I say it's a little more dangerous is, so first of all, I'm gonna say in real life, but when two live blades, so two sharp blades interact, they don't slide. So the issue with this is if someone gives me a center cut and I'm here and it's like blade versus blade, the sword's still right there. So when I try to disengage to counter, I might be pulling it one way or the other because those swords are sticky to each other. They're not stuck together, but they're sticky to each other. It's a weird word, sticky. So from here, we're going to pivot around and counter. Which is why, so one way to mitigate against this is actually to, this might be new information, is to actually not use blade versus blade, but ever so slightly turn the blade one way or the other. So at least it's hitting like the wedge side of the blade as opposed to the very edge of it. It's still going to stick, but it's going to be less sticky. So you can kind of pull it in a little bit and then use that counter. But then the last thing I want you to consider is you also don't necessarily need to actively block it. Doesn't mean you let it happen. You're just kind of getting it up in there just in case you mess up, but someone's coming in, I don't even let them make contact, I'm already out of the way by the time I hit, right? First of all, that might also give them a pause, right? So if someone's giving me a center cut, I'm already in a guard, they might be just like, all right, I'm gonna follow through but know what to do next. But this is a very fast combination, hence why it's one reason to block a center cut, also gets you offline, all sorts of good things. All of that talking aside, you have your happy little target. In fact, I'm actually going to face this way because I feel like that might be a little bit more helpful. So from here, it's not going to look super pretty per se. Go off to the side, counter, and then either step back, however, whatever guard you want to use, right? There are a few ways to augment this. So the classic Federation, or former old Federation, is just going to be 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's fine, right? You still got out and all that fun stuff. But I just want to give you a few other things to contemplate, because that's what I do. that's what I do here. So one thing I would like to do, and in fact, I'm actually going to do it facing this direction, is, so one way to get used to the motion in case that still felt a little weird, which is fine. For now, more as a drill more than anything else, if you want to make contact here, and as you step, you pivot around it here, and then turn and cut, that is absolutely okay. If this is brand new to you, in fact, I do recommend it. If you're teaching this to someone and they're brand new to it, I also recommend this. The reason why is, actually I'll face you and do it. If you give a brand, I guess calling them a brand new newbie, anyway, a new person, right? Do an 11 block. They might do something like this and pivot, because it hits the major milestones that most people look for. My sword is up, I have cut, I am back. But that transition in the beginning is quite important. Notice a lot of people do drop just to come back up. So if you keep the sword tip on the target and you pivot, that actually keeps the thing keeping you from not dying still forward as I move and counter, right? It's just kind of a kind of peek behind the curtains of, okay, so that's why I recommend this, right? So by keeping it on line and I step, it gets used to the idea of, instead of doing this, I am here and then countering and all of that fun stuff. So I realize there's a ton of talk on this, but hopefully it's not wasted breath. So practice that a few times and we'll do a few other similar drills. Actually, let me show you the other side as well. So if we're here, you can still do the other side. Cover, counter. I actually like this one. So actually, what would I like to do? I would probably just turn it back into a next block and then back, just so you have kind of like a change in movement, so you kind of get used to like new angles and stuff like that. I also do it facing this way. Again, you can place a tip on the front if you want. Step, pivot. I would probably go this way and then back, right? One thing I want you to note, actually, as from this angle especially, the reason why they teach this side and not the other side in the old way is because of distance. So notice, even if I start with my tip here, so that means I'm effectively at the same distance before. If I do to the left, my front foot's about in line with there, and I can counter hitting what would be the back of the neck, for example, pretty easily. Versus, if I'm here, I would have to really push to get the same distance, so I'm ultimately a little bit out of range. So that's why the Federation taught that side on the passing step, and that side for next video is a transverse shuffle, which is not what they call it, but I think it's cute, so I'm going to go with that. All that words along, practice that a few times. 2 more drills that you can kind of play with for this. So one is going to be a generic kind of framework that I want you to have. So one thing that I encourage you as a viewer, and also someone who just actively trains in many different things, when someone teaches you an idea, try to extrapolate it, right? So for example, actually with the previous one, right? I said 11 block, diagonal, and that was kind of vague with just get out of there, right? But something that I'll encourage you to do, something I'll encourage you to do is like, okay, does there have to be a diagonal cut? Can I do a cross cut? Sure. Can I do an uppercut? Sure. Can I do a, it's not even the Mazzani, what would that be? It would be Mazzani. Mazzani. Yeah. So it's a general framework that I highly encourage you to kind of play with. So in fact, I'm going to give you a framework specifically to do this with, right? So facing your target, stepping off to the side. I like my diagonals. Just something that I like to do. I guess I might as well give you my reasons. The reason I like to do diagonals is it gives me a lot of stuff to do after, as opposed to with a center cut, I really still have to realign with that center line, right? I can still push up to go to another side, for example, but with a diagonal, it's very easy to hip check into another diagonal, hip check into a cross, hip check into an upper. It's nice. It's a nice one, right? So what I encourage you to do, so the framework is going to be passing step diagonal. So what's nice about this is it doesn't actually have to be like a lethal shot per se, right? This could actually encourage a what we call like a bind or a wind. I didn't actually find out what they were, but a bind of two swords. So they could actually actively try to get that bind, and then as you pivot, move around to strike the other side. Now what I'm going to do in this one is follow through and then do another follow through. That's kind of like a best case scenario, but I encourage you to also try stopping halfway and moving into another direction. So let's try a few best case scenarios, right? So if we're here, step through diagonal. What I would probably do, just because usually when people block that way, they're like, eh. I would actually go for this happy little uppercut here. Hip check as I step, uppercut. Now what I'm going to do is be in my X block, or I believe this is Ox Guard in Lichten Tower. Shout out to those who practice German HEMA. So from here, and then step back. Now some of you, maybe, some of you might be like, there's something you could have done there that would have been nice. I'm going to do it. So from here, passing step, either getting into a wind or trying to follow through. Uppercut. Remember what I did before. From here, I want to get out. So this is a guard. I'm actually going to thrust, push, defense. Not required. That's a little bit spicier than probably what most people are used to. But the idea of using your thrust to be able to push yourself back. First of all, that's something that I got from the Fiore HEMA school, so I'm going to shout out to them. But also it is very common in Lichten Tower, at least as far as I know, and other HEMA styles. But I encourage you to try it, right? But what I encourage you to do here, try all sorts of different cuts. Try your uppercut into an X block guard. Try your diagonal cut into a cross cut into, I was going to just do another X block, into a Pao Sensei maybe. Try all sorts of different things and try obviously both sides, right? So from here, right, I can still go off to the side diagonal. Notice uppercut would be a little bit harder for me because uppercut's a little bit shorter range. If I pivot and cut, I can maybe get you. So for going this way, I probably would go with my other diagonal cut. And then from here, probably either maintain my dented Dishingaro or step back into like a half queen guard or whatever you want to use. So try that framework. Try on both sides, again, a couple of times. Again, be kind to your partners. Give that a go. And the third one that I would like to do for this one is going to be actually a little bit of a dial back, but just has some fun flavor to it. Mostly because I like fighting one-handed, just because I'm a jerk. But this idea is actually going to be taken is actually going to be a very strong word for it, but mildly inspired by the cutting thrusting drill that the Federation developed last year. Let's take a look, right? It's not going to look particularly weird in any particular way, but same idea, right? So give me your standard cut. From there, throw a one-handed thrust. The reason for one-handed is, first of all, it's easier for me to get my offhand just away from the situation. As opposed to if I'm always here, this is very open. So if I cut, the ideal is to follow through. So the sword's low, I'm going to stab upward. From here, I'm going to pivot as I step. Thrust, right? You're going to notice actually I do this and follow through this way. There are reasons for that. For now, just bear with me. Here, use this to push off and back. Notice I'm kind of going a little ham with the actual push off method, mostly because it's something that, first of all, many of your peers aren't going to be doing. It's a good way for you to get used to that distance, right? It's also really good open hand. But notice you can do this with all sorts of good stuff, right? You can do cross cut and then use your, again, think about elbowing back this way instead of necessarily this way, but thrusting here, aiming for a very painful hip stab and getting back this way. Side note, because I guess I'm feeling sort of casual with this video for some reason. Why do we aim for the hip? Because it is, first of all, very obnoxious to protect, as in like guarding it in some weird position, it is very debilitating. If I get stabbed right there, I want to go home. Right? I'm not going to like actively try to continue a fight, for example. With our happy little crosscut, aiming for just where the leg meets the hip, going there and really using your full body to push it back is a good time for me, not a good time for them. But notice you can also do this with uppercuts as well. So you can do a happy little uppercut, stabbing in this way, following through, and then back this way. You don't need to have like a silly figure eight, but I encourage you to try that. I'm going to go a little bit on this side as well, just so you can see that it works on both sides. So for many of you, this is actually probably going to be a little more comfortable, because most of you are probably more comfortable just using your right hand. So from here, bang, following through this way, right? You can do that with all the other ones. And if you're really feeling sassy, you just want to try this a little more at full speed, especially with your more dexterous hand, go ahead, right? So bang, bang, and be all dramatic and fun. Because ultimately, it's also supposed to be fun. So, obviously, deep caveat, so little asterisks here, which is probably not going to be here in post. If you do try the thrusts with a partner, a human being, or living organism at all, because I'm going to keep it there. If you are practicing with a partner, be uber safe with this, because this is the easiest thing to accidentally hurt someone. So when I cut, literally just tap them and use my body to step back. Notice there's no like dimple in the actual target. Just make contact to show that I could have, and just step away from it. Now if you have a tower target like this, sure, right? Just make sure you have a very dull tip, because you will stab this. So for no reason at all, don't practice this with those cold steel ones, because they will, yeah, don't do it. But anyway, so with that, that was my little safety thing. So make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training. Haidong!